have our core values solidified. We have integrity. We want our team to be engaged, and we want them to be innovative. And those are really the three lenses, if you will, that we make decisions in the business. That's how we make decisions on who's going to be promoted if they're exemplifying those.
Welcome to Build Your Culture Brand with Dr. Jay Rains. Join us as we discover ways to define, measure, and grow your culture. We want to help you intentionally build a culture that fits you.
Hey leaders, welcome back to the Build Your Culture Brand podcast. I have with me today Grace Neeley. She's an owner-operator in Dayton, Ohio. Welcome to the show, Grace.
Thanks, Jay. Thanks for having me.
So excited about getting into your story. Grace, everywhere I go, if I meet an operator who knows you, I get this reaction. I love Grace. You have this fan base within the operator world. And I mean, you've been an operator kind of for a short while, like just a few 4 years, not like, decades like some of them. And you just have this amazing fan base within the operator world. So congratulations on that.
Thank you. I'm very blessed by people that are operators, and we have a very special community.
It's great when you have peers like that who are cheering you on and want you to win. So good to see. So let's take a minute before we dive into your story to let our listeners get to know your leadership style a little bit better. You've been an operator since March of 2021 there at Dayton Mall, and you've got this amazing team, and you love, the people you work with. But as you think about your interaction with them, what would you say is your leadership superpower? And then on the opposite side of that, what would be your kryptonite?
I think my superpower and my kryptonite are one and the same. I tend to see the best in people and see their potential. And so I will give them unlimited chances, not unlimited. I will give them more chances than they probably should deserve, because I just see the potential and I want them to succeed. And that shows up in my team. Like, I'll take risks on people that are not typically, if you think of like the typical Chick-fil-A team member who is perfect and they have no outside issues going on, and they come from a 2-parent home, like that doesn't really exist on my team. And so my team, like, they know that I care about them, and it shows up really well. But on the flip side, sometimes I can frustrate my leaders by encouraging them to give somebody else another chance if they break an infraction, or they have an infraction, or they are maybe not meeting all of our standards.
I love how your superpower actually connects to your name. So, right? So you want to live in a place of grace. You want to offer lots of grace. I love that. It's so amazing. But I appreciate the fact that you see the downside of that there are times where that goes too far. And so managing that, that's probably something that may be a lifelong learning. But I always think, if you're going to have to lean one way or the other, isn't it better to just lean toward grace? So, I mean, I need it. So, it's nice to give it as well. So, well, now, one fun fact here, you're at a mall location, and when we were doing the pre-call, we were talking, you're in this spot, and we were talking about maybe, are you going to go to your house or some other background? And I'm like, no, we should film right here. And so what's unique, I think it's really unique. For those of you who are watching on YouTube, you can see on the video, but we'll describe it to those listening. But what's unique about the actual location where you're sitting right now in your mall?
Sure. So I have a cook-up front mall location. So I have an upstairs. And this restaurant was built in 1981. And so the office is upstairs. This is the office. I'm 5'4", and I'm sitting on a chair, and I can reach the ceiling. You can't see my hand, but I can reach the ceiling. And it's just a very confined space. We have to warn people all the time to not hit their head. There's a sprinkler like right here, and many people have bashed their head on the sprinkler because it's so low.
I love that. I think that's something that a lot of people don't realize, that in many mall locations, there is that upper office area, just, to provide some space for office. And that's just something, we don't see behind, it's kind of a behind the scenes thing that the customer, myself, I had never known that until a few years ago. I ran into an operator that had one. So that's so amazing. So we're filming from the war room of Dayton Mall Chick-fil-A, right?
Yes, that is very true.
Awesome. That's so cool. So, and there's another unique factor about your mall location. Tell me a little bit about that location itself.
Yes, I have a dining room, and so we are not in the food court, and we're essentially the anchor of my end of the mall. There was an anchor there, but they went out of business in 2017, and so people are literally coming to the end of the mall where I'm at to come to Chick-fil-A. They will visit us and eat in the dining room, and then the mall was gracious enough to put some tables and chairs out in the breezeway, and so we've kind of taken over the mall a little bit. But it also, my sales mix is very different. We have 40% of our sales come from third-party partners, so DoorDash, Uber Eats, and Postmates, and it allows those drivers to have an easy access into the mall, because typically mall locations, like, there isn't this great easy way to just get into Chick-fil-A and then get out of the mall. Like, usually you have to walk pretty far, and so there's a little bit of a hike, but it allows them to not have to go upstairs to the food court where there is not an exterior entrance.
Okay. That is super unique. So really, you're the anchor store for that
Yes.
end of the mall. That's awesome.
People will stop me all the time and say one of two things. They'll say, "Oh, we love that Chick-fil-A is down here because we don't have to go into the food court," or they'll say, "Bless your heart, honey, you're down here away from everything and nobody knows you're down here." So it's funny to see where people land on the spectrum.
That's so fun. What led you to select now? So you're in that process and you have these options. You could look around, you could choose other locations, and yet you chose Dayton Mall. So tell me about maybe some reactions to that, and your thinking behind the selection with Dayton Mall.
So I'm from Dayton. I worked in this market my whole life while I was at Chick-fil-A. And Dayton Mall, it's a hard restaurant just because of well, historically, the people who visited the mall, there was a curfew. And if you were under the age of 18, past 4 p.m., you had to be with somebody who was over the age of 18 because they had a lot of theft, fights. It was just pretty rough. And so when I was in LDP, I I really did not think that I would have the opportunity to come home. And I mean, it was Dayton Mall was never on my radar, but because it was COVID, the operator who was here got selected early, and he was only here for 9 months when he got selected for reload. So my home operator called me and he said, "Hey, Dayton Mall is open," and that was the only opportunity for me to come home. Like, I came home in 2021, and they have not built another restaurant in 3.5 years in Dayton. So that was, I mean, I remember calling my parents and being like, "Hey, Dayton Mall is an opportunity. What do you think?" And both of them were like, "You want to go to Dayton Mall? Like, what?" And my dad actually drove down here the next day and like took pictures for me and checked it out. Cause I mean, I had been in LDP, and so I hadn't visited the mall in a couple of years. So he actually drove down and took pictures of the dining room and everything that he could see, and he ordered food, and then he sent me pictures of the food. And so it, like, a lot of people were like, "Are you sure you want to do this?" There was a lot of hesitancy with people that I talked to, but it really was my opportunity to come home, and that was my desire.
Wow, that's really amazing. That it even opened up at that time. So now, what was the condition that you received in? How would you describe kind of where you started with it, and then some of the things that have happened along the way, just with the mall, with the location itself?
I the so I took it over when it was COVID, so the dining room was closed, and the previous operator, he just had it closed off with stanchions, so you could still see the dining room, and people would ask all the time, like, "Hey, can we go use the bathroom?" Because again, the anchor store is closed. There are no bathrooms down here, and so people always use my bathrooms if they're at this end of the mall. So the dining room was closed off. It was pretty uninviting. And then when it was under Chick-fil-A Inc., the IM who is here, he bought PVC pipes and shower curtains and closed it off so you couldn't see through. Um, so it was better because you couldn't see it, but then that led to a bad habit where the team was just throwing like trash and all kinds of boxes into the dining room. So when I took it over, there's 20 people here. The leaders, there was I think 4 leaders, and they were pretty burned out. COVID had been rough on them, and they didn't have much direction. They didn't have a great relationship with the IM, so I was just working on repairing those relationships and getting them to trust me. And then we did a lot to improve the flow of the restaurant. So within 6 months, I asked Chick-fil-A for a remodel. And if you've never been in a cook up front mall, we have the registers, and then directly behind the registers are our open fryers where we cook waffle fries. And then within 5 feet are all of our pressure fryers where we cook the chicken. And you are assembling everything within the guest view. And it was just, the setup was really odd. People did not, the flow didn't work very well. And so I ended up having them do that remodel. We made it more like a kitchen. And I was the first operator in 40 years to install a set of chutes, which is where you pass the chicken or the sandwiches through, and nuggets and all of that. And that just really allowed us to increase our throughput capacity, which allowed us to serve more guests and allowed me to hire more people and really start providing a great experience for our guests.
That when you describe that cook up front, it takes me back to my first Chick-fil-A experience in the 80s in Temple, Texas. I wish I could figure out, remember, we knew the owner operator, but I can't remember their names. And it was just, I'm a kid at the time, but there was that style, like that early 80s cook up front style. So man, you've taken me back a few years there. So
I remember in the
and
early days, we'd be making sandwiches, and guests would come up because there was a cutout into the dining room through the kitchen. And so they could see everything. And we would be making sandwiches, and someone would come up and say, "Hey, can I have some ketchup?" So you'd have to leave making sandwiches, go get ketchup, and like go give it to them. So it was very unique.
very unique. And then throw COVID in there and
Yes.
all of the implications of that. I can't even imagine. Okay.
Yes.
So you got a remodel, and that helped with kind of flow and even productivity. Sounds like it really changed productivity. And you started on a trajectory where you were actually able to turn it around and really build revenue. Tell me about the award and that just took place, and just some of the things that led up to that.
So thankfully, when the previous operator was here, he implemented some curbside parking spots. And so I built on that momentum. He also implemented some third party partnerships, but I had hired the most amount of people that the restaurant had ever had, because I remember in fundamentals, Tim Tasopoulos was talking about guests will come back to a restaurant if they feel like somebody is there to serve them. If they don't have somebody ready to serve them right away, they don't feel like it's a great experience. So I really took that to heart, and I hired a ton of people. So my first year, if I had taken over in January, I would have hit Symbol that year, but I took over in March, so I wasn't eligible. But from March to December, we were up 27%. That following year, we just, again, like, we worked on our systems, we worked on our team, and we worked on our culture. And so in 2022, we were up 23%, and I officially did hit Symbol. And then fast forward to 2023, my neighbor, who at that point was the busiest Chick-fil-A in Ohio, and she's less than 2 miles away from me. She was closed down for a remodel. It was supposed to be 16 weeks, and it turned into a 6 month remodel. So I ended up hitting Symbol in August of that year, and I was up 65% for the year. Um, and so now, like, if you look back to, if you compare sales to the end of 2020, I've more than doubled the sales here. And we, like, it's just been, it's been fun to lead that and be a part of that, because they, like, I think I shared with you, I had to get special permission from the executive committee to take over the restaurant because they were going to shut it down at the end of 2020.
Oh, right. Yes. So it was actually going to be shuttered, and you asked to keep it open. Give me a chance with it.
I did. I actually, I argued quite a bit because I told them, I said, this is my hometown. I've got a community here. I know people will show up for me. And if it doesn't make money, that's my choice. I told them I would buy my parents' old vehicle, which I did. And then I said I would live with my parents until it made money. And I did that as well. And so I wanted to make sure that they they wanted to give me the chance and that I was going to make it work.
Wow. Uh, uh, now, so now our listeners understand why you have such an operator fan base. So you're gritty, you argue your point, you win. Oh man, this is amazing. Love the story. So, and for those who are listening who don't know what symbol means, that's a distinction. There's really three big awards in Chick-fil-A world, and that's symbol of success, champions, which is another part, kind of like growth. So symbol of success is a certain percentage of growth in a year, and you hit way well past that. I think at the time it was what, 19%, and you went way past it.
It's 20% for
20.
malls, and for the year it's up to 65%.
So still went, yeah, and way past that. And then there's the Guardians of the Brand, which is a food safety award. So you won that award back to back 2 years in a row. Congratulations on that. And cool fun fact: when you win that award, you had bought your parents' car, but when you win that award, you get a car. So
Yes.
took
Yes.
care of that.
Yep. And I did hit Champions Club last year, but I don't really. I think it is a big deal, but I think Symbol kind of that narrative tells the story a little bit more.
It does. Congratulations. Great
Yes.
job.
Thank you.
So I want to get into a harder part of your story. And you made this choice to come home, to be at the mall, to be near your family and all this. And then some other things happen along the way that were unexpected. And so here you are, and I wanted to really paint this picture of this growth and this amazing journey, and you've done such a great job. But there are also some personal things happening that were just very challenging. And I want this to be an encouraging thing for someone out there who also might be experiencing something very challenging in their personal life. So I'll set it up that way. Can you share with us a little bit about what took place after you came to Dayton?
Yes. So I took over in March of 2021, and 2 weeks to the day after I took over, my dad unexpectedly passed away. So in January of 2021, he had quintuple bypass surgery, and he was recovering fairly well. He was home and doing physical therapy, and then it just was almost like his heart just gave out. I remember going to work that day, and I was standing in the storage room getting ready to get something. I don't remember what it was. And my sister called and said, "Hey, Dad has collapsed. We've rushed him to the hospital, but it's not looking good." And so I was just thinking, like, this can't be the end. But he had collapsed. He was non-responsive, and so the doctor was a Christian, and he asked my mom. He said, "Hey, do you have a relationship with the Lord? Do you have faith?" And she said yes. And he said, "Is your husband a believer?" And she said yes. And he said, well, we can continue to try to resuscitate him, but I don't know what his brain function would be. And so my mom chose, she was like, no, let him go. So that was very challenging. And I was super close with my dad. I talked to him every day. Like, he was the guy who had any fix to any problem, no matter where it was in the country. I could call him and be like, hey, I need help with this. What do you think? So he's just very innovative. And then fast forward a couple months, I had a friend pass away in a car wreck, and he was only 24, and he left behind a 1 month old. And then a few weeks after that, I had a team member pass away unexpectedly. And so, just me personally, I lost 3 people in my life within 9 months while I was opening a business and navigating grief that had happened in my team. And we, like, a lot of us lost lives that year. I was telling somebody the other day, I think within the first 3 months of me being the owner here, there was 20 people that was connected to my team or myself that had passed away within 3 months. And so it just felt like we were constantly experiencing some sense of grief.
Grace, such a tremendous story. I can't even fathom all the things that are going on in your heart and mind and the grief, and yet you're in the midst of starting a business, and it's like holding a tiger by the tail, and it's going and growing, and you're so. A couple of questions that rise to my mind, though, is one, you have a team that's grieving and you're grieving. So how did you even navigate helping them grieve while you're grieving as well?
I I didn't handle my grief very well initially. I only took 1 day off when he passed away because I was like, I it's not going to be healthy for me to just sit at home and wallow. I know he wouldn't have wanted that. And so he and my mom, the year that he passed away, they would have been married for 40 years. And so I asked her, I said, hey, I don't want to sit here and just like cry. What do you think about me going back to work? And she was like, yeah, I agree. I can't just sit here. Like, we need to do things. So looking back, I think I should have probably taken some more time off just to process it. Because I remember the day that I came back, I was like trying. I was very honest with my team. Like, hey, I don't know. I'm probably gonna lose it a couple times. Just let me cry. Whatever. Like, I'll be fine. And I remember trying to bag and order, and I completely messed up. And so I was just like honest, and I said, "Well, obviously, I don't have the mental capacity to do this. So, tell me what you want me to do to help." Um, but then, just moving forward, I was way more empathetic. I did see a counselor for a while to just help me process that grief. Because if you've never lost somebody close to you, man, I just felt like crazy. I felt like I couldn't function. My brain just wasn't working. There were times where I literally was just in a fog. And so just having somebody help me understand how grief really like affects your thought processes helps a lot. And then I was there for my team when they lost somebody. Like, I encouraged them to seek out other people that could help them share the memories of that person, and I encouraged them to take time. And I was like, I'll support you. When my team member passed away, um, she did not have life insurance. They didn't have like an emergency fund or anything like that. So I felt led to actually pay for her funeral because I wanted her family to have the ability to like grieve her in a space and not have to worry about not having a funeral and being able to celebrate her life. And so that was very impactful. And that was before the Chick-fil-A Together Fund. And so now you can apply for that. Um, but I just learned that I needed to meet people where they're at, and I needed to have a lot of empathy for whatever they were going through, whether that was losing somebody or just experiencing some toughness in life.
it really changes your lens, doesn't it? As
Very much
you
so.
look at other people and see the world. So then the other question, and thank you for sharing that. I appreciate you taking us there and helping us see even those moments of struggle. So then the other question that comes to mind though is, how does that change you as a leader? You mentioned empathy, but maybe some more on empathy, but what else changed for you as a leader?
When when I was a leader in my home restaurant and going through LDP, is very black and white. Like, hey, here's the rule. You break it. Here's the consequence. And so now, after going through this, I'm still pretty black and white. Like, I'm a high D, still pretty black and white, but I would say we exist more in shades of gray. Um, when we're navigating issues with team members or anything like that, like, there's a lot of people who are Gen Z who have a ton of anxiety, and sometimes it's so bad that it cripples them. And so, in the past, I would be like, "Oh, well, this person was late; they didn't show up. Write them up, whatever it is." But now we have gotten so much better at just talking with the person and asking them, "Hey, what's going on? Like, this is a safe space. Share with us what's going on, so we can help you in the future. Like, you understand you have messed up, you recognize that, but help us, like, provide us the tools to help you." And so that has been a pretty big shift for me because I was so black and white, and that goes back to like giving people chances. Um, it's been a big shift.
That's so good. And one of the things about coaching and leadership and self leadership is the whole awareness piece, right? I Looking back, I see myself as more black and white, like you just reflected. Now, I I've opened up this room for there to be a gray scale, and it's I don't hear that as a compromise on your part. I hear that more as a lever. It's not so binary anymore. There's a lever, and you have control of that lever, and you get to choose how much one way or the other. So great awareness on your part, great self leadership, and it is those trying, difficult, painful times that do launch us forward as leaders, isn't it? Whether we like it or not, it shapes us. So, well, Grace, one of the things I've noticed about you is the way you develop the people around you, and so you have, of course, several people working for you in the business, but you have a few top leaders that you've been investing in, and over the last couple of years, they've really stepped up and begun to grow in the business. Tell me about that shift. What were some of the things that helped them grow, and adversely, or on the opposite side, helped you release responsibility to them? What does that journey look like?
Yeah, Craig Groeschel has the quote, "When the leader gets better, everybody wins," and I think that's really true. And so I think that first year, because I was just navigating so much, I was not doing a good job at investing in the team and really honing in on like our vision and mission and providing clarity for the team. And so, um, following that, I knew I had to get better. And if I wanted my business to succeed, if I wanted to attract people who wanted to work with me long term. And so I have a couple leaders, like you said, that have been with me for a while. And we just started like pretty simply where we would meet regularly and we would talk about the business. And then from there, we've just kind of scaled it up. And so we provide a lot of feedback and we have very honest, open, transparent conversations. We've partnered with you to have monthly development calls. And so that has honestly been a huge win for us because it's bringing a third party in who doesn't know them, who doesn't interact with them on a day to day basis, and maybe can see through, like I can see through what they're trying to explain if they have missed something in their explanation, or if they've missed a process in something they're trying to implement. But when they're explaining it to somebody else who's not as familiar with them, who's not as familiar with Chick-fil-A processes, it really forces them to think through how they're communicating, what they're implementing, and also what's the follow through, like how are they following up with that. And so um, just being a good steward of the business, we're really not at the point where I've scaled the business to have a GM. And like I said, just to be a good steward of the financial piece. So I essentially act as the GM right now, and that allows me to work alongside them and provide them a lot of feedback. And then we have gotten a lot of clarity around their roles and how that ties into the business, and how what they do and the system that they implement and the people that they develop, how that directly affects the business.
That's so good. And so several things I hear in that. One of the top ones that I've noticed that's really necessary in, so if Chick-fil-A Incorporated comes to look at you and they're interacting, you get visits from time to time. And one of the things they typically watch for is that professional presence of your team. You know, they know you have it, they're convinced, and you've obviously won their confidence about your professional presence. But then you've got these team members who've kind of grown up in the organization, and maybe they haven't been given a lot of responsibility before, or they've grown into a new responsibility. And so for you to even sit around the table and get their eyes higher on the business just elevates their thinking so much. So great job for that. And I do see the benefit. Yeah, maybe that's the first time I've heard it said that way, of as they're talking to someone outside my organization, I fill in the blanks. I love that perspective, that you tend to fill in the blanks of what you know they're trying to say. But if they're talking to someone else who isn't in the day to day, they have to be more clear. So that there also helps increase that professional presence.
Yeah, and they that has been a huge win for us, because I remember the first year, if we promoted somebody, it was like, hey, you're promoted, congratulations. And there was no requirements, there was no training. It was just like, we think you're pretty good, and we see the potential in you, we see the value, and so we want to give you more responsibility. But now, I mean, we I don't want to say we've streamlined all of that, but there is a process around all of that. They have to do quite a bit to get promoted. They have to be bought in and know, like, vision, mission, core values, and then they're really charged with understanding the bigger picture of what we're trying to accomplish beyond just selling a chicken sandwich.
That's so good. And those are really the keys to maintaining culture, you know, that you've you've built this culture. You want to make sure that people you're promoting will also support that culture. And if they don't know the basic tenets of your culture, that it could slip away really quickly and introduce some wrong ideas. So great job of making sure everyone understands that part. I One of the things that has been rolling around in my mind is all of this. And I see you as a founder. You know, you didn't found that location, but in so many ways, you know, you restarted it. And so I see you as like a founder. And one of the things I'm thinking about founders is founders, they have that original group that's around them, that culture rubs off on those people, and they don't even realize what's being transferred. But as you bring new people into that top level, we miss, if we don't aren't intentional, we miss educating them on the culture that we rubbed off on. And now we have to be very explicit about, but we don't even maybe have the language. So it's good for you to create that language and make sure everyone understands, okay, you're moving in this role. Here's how we think. Great job. So with that in mind, with that founder idea in mind, and you have these leaders around you, what would be the next step in having your leaders also roll that culture forward to your team? Are you already seeing some evidence of that, or is that kind of a next step for you all?
we're working through that right now. So, like I said, we have our core values solidified. We have integrity. We want our team to be engaged, and we want them to be innovative. And those are really the three lenses, if you will, that we make decisions in the business. And so we talk about that a lot, and that's how we make decisions on who's going to be promoted if they're exemplifying those. We also have, we call them a values champion. It's essentially just team member of the month, but they're voted on. A team member is voted on by the leadership team of somebody who has exemplified those core values most recently. But we are implementing that into all of our leaders, and we talk about it a lot. And so I think just the next thing is having my leaders work on, I guess, their influence and their depth in those that they're leading. We this year we have gotten much better at meeting consistently as a leadership team, and then individually, and then ensuring that my leaders are also meeting with the people directly under them. And it's provided, like you said, a ton of professionalism. It's been allowing us to move the business forward and just have more clarity. That's really been one of the focuses this year. It's just providing more clarity for the team and how we're accomplishing things and how we want to show up in the community and really even in the mall, because we just interact with so many people in the mall, and so we want to be like the face of the mall, but we also want to be the face of our community.
That's so good. And each of those people represent that face. And so to have that consistent message and developing, and I love even how you described, I just want to pull a thread there that you described, you do one-on-ones with your leaders, and then they turn around and do one-on-ones with the next level. And so in a way you're modeling, well, how do we do that? They may have never had a one-on-one. They may not even know how to run it, but if they could just kind of follow your pattern, turn right around and do it with the next person, then it gives them an immediate model. So great job doing that. So Grace, it's been so fun having you on the show. Thanks for sharing your story. And I really hope that someone listening today is encouraged by that, or at least it might bring some healing for someone that's out there who's going through the very same thing, or they're wondering how to deal with a grief situation that they're in right now, or even to help someone else that's around them, and to think about how to do some self-care. And so, and thanks for showing us how you've grown. And we're celebrating the awards, but it's fun to hear and very interesting to hear kind of the behind the scenes, even from your mall office there, all the learnings you've had along the way. And I look forward to seeing a bright future from you in the future.
Thanks, Jay. It was an honor to be on the podcast. This was great.
Thank you for listening to Build Your Culture Brand with Dr. Jay Rains. If you enjoyed this podcast, please like, comment, and share. You can also visit our website at buildyourculturebrand.com.